Thank you, Nicole, for that really beautiful introduction. You make me sound far better than I am, but thank you. So nice to see everyone. Thank you for being here as well. I know that it's the fatigue with Zoom can get is real, and hopefully we're not far off that. So yeah, thank you. I am going to get into sharing my screen. So just hold tight as we do that. Right, can you guys all see that?
Yes.
Awesome. So let's get into it. So as Nicole said, I'm going to be talking about the theme of resilience in my creative journey. And I thought, what better place to start than what the dictionary says about what resilient is, and what it's an adjective and it's also a noun. So it's able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions or challenges. It means able to recoil or spring back into shape after bending, stretching, or being compressed. And it's the ability to withstand adversity and bounce back from difficult life events. And this word is very familiar to all of us at the moment. It's basically what we've been doing the last 18 months with this global pandemic. And I want to acknowledge to everybody who's like shown up today that literally that's what you're doing every day, is showing your resilience, showing up. And good on you for that, because it's not been easy. And also I think it's worth saying that resilience isn't an extraordinary thing. We all actually have it. It's what we do to get up in the morning at times like this in a global pandemic. It's a muscle, and we can get better at it as we overcome each of these challenges. So so today what I'm going to do is talk to you about my experience of becoming a director, making a film, and surviving to tell that tale. As you can see, it did feel like day 1,005,100 of making this film a couple of months ago. It has been a really long journey, which is why Nicole asked me to speak about it. So let's get into it. Oh, yes. And also the 7 lessons I've learned along that path of in being resilient. So I'm going to share those with you. It's not the only things I learned, but we've only got under 30 minutes to get through this. So let's get started. Nicole did a really great introduction to the film there. It's called Tall Poppy. What I thought I'd also do is just share with you a short little trailer of the film. Hopefully it doesn't glitch too much, but here we go.
Now dropping in, Poppy Star Olsen.
To float and soar and fly high.
Does Poppy have pressure to succeed? Yes.
You get scared almost every day, but that means you're pushing yourself.
Skateboarding set to debut at the next Olympics in Tokyo.
I've always wanted to go to the Olympics.
She's going to get challenged in a way she's never been challenged.
Definitely think we're going to see Poppy in the Olympics.
The pandemic has now claimed the 2020 Games.
Worked for so long, almost 4 years towards this thing. And then you have that fear, are you going to work all this time again?
Right, so that's the trailer. That's the film we're going to talk about and what I made. Since story is what I know, I thought the best way to kind of tell my story is use the classic 3-act story structure. It's the thing that you guys would have seen in every film, read every story, any TV show. It's a classic. In the beginning, we've got Act 1. I'll tell you what happened. Then there's this exciting incident that happens, which is the thing that sends that character off on the journey that you're going to see. The midpoint is where all the action happens, the challenges, the ups, the downs. And then into the 3rd act, it's the climax of the film. And then there's a resolution where the dust settles. So Act 1, let's set this scene. So this is really all about me kind of making a decision to get into directing. So back in 2015, which was 6 years ago now, six and a half, I was working in advertising as a producer. I was X many years into this career I created for myself. And while I enjoyed it, and I found the work was mostly fun and I loved working with teams, there was this thing niggling at me in the background of doing all this producing work. I found that I really enjoyed interviewing people. I loved being in the edit suite and making creative choices. And what I realized, I was watching other people doing this thing I really love to do. A memory triggered for me. I'd attended an open day at AFTRS, which is the Australian Film, Television, Radio School, in my very early teens. That was in North Ryde, which is an extremely long time ago. And I had gone specifically because I wanted to go for directing. I wanted to go for the directing course. And I had this brochure, you know, those little threefold brochures. Again, this is way before the internet was what it was. And I read it cover to cover, and I kept it in my desk drawer at home for years. I also realized I went to media and communications. I'd always loved telling stories, mine and others. But I guess, you know, life happens, you get offered jobs, you get good at something. And before you know it, you've been doing something for a long time. So I had this realization that I really wanted to direct. Like I said, I think it was something I knew that I really wanted to do all along. But I think also with that, I didn't really have the confidence to pursue that creative path. It just felt like that was something for somebody else. So at the time I had these challenges. I had minimal experience in directing. I had lacked a lot of confidence, and I was working in advertising. It's a super male dominated industry. You've got all the creative roles, and a lot of the directors are male, and a lot of those traditional kind of support roles were filled by females. Lesson number 1, start where you are. I read Seth Godin's book, The Practice, just a couple of months ago. I really wish I'd read it 5 years ago. He's written a ton of books on marketing and creativity. Actually, I couldn't have read it 5 years ago. He only just read it, just wrote it. And he says this: before you're a best-selling author, you're an author and authors write. Before you're an acclaimed entrepreneur, you're simply someone who is building something. The only choice we have is to begin. The only place is to begin where you are. So mid-2015, I was like, fuck it. Like, what can I do? I have a camera. I'm going to start filming stuff. So I started filming my friends. They were doing these really interesting jobs. They had like leveraged their passions into careers, and I was really curious about that. I was filming my friends because I was more comfortable with that. And I was doing it just for myself, just to see if it was something that I could do. I was so curious in their passions and what drove them to do the things that they did. I also, as I was working as a freelancer, I dedicated time to making these films outside of my daily life. My 4th film was going to be on this young girl from Bondi. Her name was Poppy Star. I'd met her a couple of years earlier when she was 13. She was skateboarding at Bondi Bowl. She was dropping in the deep end. She flew out over the coping without cracking a sweat or losing a cool. Mostly, I was impressed with the fact that she wasn't paying attention to all the people watching her, or that she was the only girl amongst a sea of boys and men, some of them double or triple her age. She had that innocence of unawareness. She was completely unaffected by the people that were watching her. And for someone who was super shy through their teenage years, and I was constantly worried about what other people thought of me, particularly my peers and particularly boys. So for me, seeing a young girl not really caring about those things super intrigued me, and I thought, this is going to make a great short film. In 2016, she was 2016, she was 15, and she was going to LA to go in her first professional competition. That was actually the thing I thought, I'll make that. I love traveling. I'll jump on a plane. I've got friends in the US. I'll go. I spent a week there with her and her mum, getting to know this really incredible community of girls in skateboarding. And she unexpectedly won that competition. I wasn't expecting it. She wasn't expecting it. Her mum wasn't, neither was the whole community. And she just she was so shocked. And she was such a awkward, fun, charming kid. And at that time, I guess for me, that was the striking of the match. That was this idea of this could be something bigger than a short film. This could be this thing that helps me get into this directing place. I didn't really know what it would be over the next 6 years, but this was the striking of the match. I had no idea at the time that's what it was. All I knew was that there was an instinct to follow the story, and I was feeling exhilarated by the possibility. Act 2, the action, the drama, midpoint, and hard times. So that same year, a good friend of mine was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he passed away 6 weeks later. With an urgent sense of how short life was, when Poppy was invited to the X Games a few months later, I thought, fuck it, you only live once, and I hopped on a plane with Poppy and her mum to Austin, Texas. I self-funded the trip, including hiring a local cameraman, for a couple of days. I had my trusty DSLR camera and a shit ton of passion from what had happened. It fueled me through the trip in light of all this tragic news. It was definitely like a hashtag YOLO moment. I had like nothing to lose. Again, the film wasn't a film at this stage. I didn't know what it was. I was just following my nose. Over the next 16 months, things kind of really started to take off. The first thing was that skateboarding was announced as Olympic sport, way off in 2020. It was 2016 at this point. SheDoc was announced as a fellowship to support emerging female filmmakers. And after a rigorous application process, I was one of the first recipients, which was super incredible. I got to go to LA and work with Lucy Walker, who's an acclaimed documentary director, and get some mentorship from her because I really had no idea what I was doing. I also found a producer who was interested in developing my idea, and they introduced me to this wonderful young cinematographer who was super keen and also happened to skateboard and had filmed skateboarding. So that was really great for me. Along with that team, we managed to go for development money with Create New South Wales and Screen Australia, and we got a little bit of development money, which was super awesome. In life, things were going great. I went on this epic trip to New Zealand. I was working in freelancing and advertising, and I was even starting to direct some stuff, which was great. I was having a great time. I felt like, you know what, this is awesome. I'm on this path of becoming a director. Meanwhile, young Poppy was turning into a teenager. She was becoming more aware of the world around her. She'd rather be doing other things than like being interviewed by me on how she felt about anything really, like winning, losing, being on the road, what she thought of her friends, what she thought of competition. Anything emotional was proving to be quite challenging. She was a little bit more one-worded answers, and most of it was really fun. Life was just fun. I have like a whole roll of her just saying that. And also she was 16, and sometimes I don't think you really have the words. But this is storytelling, and you need drama. You need so much drama to make a story interesting over the course of a film. So in the course of developing that, the question was, what are the stakes? And the stakes are for what is what your protagonist has to lose. What do they have to gain? What's the central conflict? And when she was always like, you know, it's okay, I'm fine. I'm fine if I win or lose. It doesn't really raise those stakes much. You know, where was the jeopardy, I guess, is what was going on. And the truth of the matter is I had no fucking idea. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never written a film before. I didn't know how to find it because of this character and because of the way it was playing out. And also the Olympic qualifiers was just, no one really knew what was going on in that world. So it was hard to actually see it. I started to doubt myself and my ability and my instinct. I didn't have the answers, and I feel like my brain froze a lot at the time. Bring on imposter syndrome. It's a noise in our heads that reminds us we have no business putting our hand up or putting ourselves out there. I feel like I've always had a seriously bad case of imposter syndrome, going back to that earlier stuff around not being good enough to do creative. And at the time I was well into my 30s, and I was still questioning if I was good enough at anything, particularly when it comes to putting out my own creative ideas and backing that. I always felt super vulnerable. And I know that is not just me. I know that this is something that we all face all the time, and I don't know where it comes from. You know, added to that, I was in completely foreign territory. You know, I didn't understand how the funding worked. I didn't know many people in the scene, even though I had like the producers, and there's so much talent like that already existed in that field. I was still working in advertising, and the status quo of like what my peers would think was stuff that would get to me. Oh, sorry. So I had a few challenges. I had a teenage Poppy with one-word answers, lack of jeopardy, imposter syndrome. I was still working, and I was dealing with loss. Lesson number 2, feel the fear and do it anyway. Back to Seth Godin. I feel like an imposter often. That's because my best work involved doing things I've never done before. Of course, you're not sure how it's going to work out. How could you be? The imposter is proof we are innovating and creating. I love this quote because it really does remind you that you're doing something new. You're creating something that doesn't exist. You're not going to know how it's going to work out. That's all part of the process. So really what you have to do is not listen to it. Feel the fear and do it anyway. That brings us to the midpoint of the story. That's usually the highest high or the lowest low. Unfortunately for me, it was a bit of a low low. The end of 2018 rolled around and the development money was all spent. We created the pitch materials, which was a trailer and treatment and a few other things. And unfortunately, at that stage, my producers and I parted ways amicably. So I had these materials, but I had no producer to pitch them in order to get funding, which is what I really needed in order to make the film. Poppy was traveling all over the world. I needed help. I needed a producer. I couldn't do it all on my own. And even though I had these development materials, without a producer, your stock is worth nothing and no one will give you money. At the same time this was happening, my father had gotten very sick unexpectedly with a mystery illness, and over a horrific 6 months that ended with his passing in February 2019. So I had some pretty full-on challenges. I had no producer, tragedy and grief, and quite frankly, I had an empty tank. Unsurprisingly, that time left me pretty broken. And when it comes to that creative idea of yours that you've worked so hard and bringing to life, it requires a lot of emotional strength to keep going. Even when things are going smoothly, you need to have that internal flame that just keeps driving you. It requires so much faith when no one else does. It requires believing in yourself and your instincts. And quite honestly, I just did not have it in me. The passion and the drive was gone. They say, lesson number 3, they say you should never ever give up unless you do, and that's okay too. I think there's a lot of strength in knowing when to walk away from something. It's definitely its own kind of resilience. It takes guts, it takes a reckoning with yourself and really looking at what is the best thing for you at that time. There's a ton of ideas and stories and artworks and songs and poems and films and plays that have never been finished or have been finished and never have seen the light of day. Like the graveyard of creative ideas is as vast as the universe. And it actually really breaks my heart. You know, for every story around like the Queen's Gambit or Squid Games that's doing the rounds at the moment, we hear these like incredible stories of resilience over years and years and years and years. There's 1,000 more that didn't make it. So much of 2019 was spent dealing with my grief, like getting on with life, working. Poppy had spent most of the year traveling overseas, having a wonderful time. And she competed in her first Olympic qualifier events, and I'd missed the train on all of it. I'd met a couple of producers who were trying to get some money for the film, but we were knocked back constantly, and it just felt like it was an uphill battle. Everyone thought the idea was great. Good, girls skated the Olympics, but there was just no one willing to put their money where their mouth was, and it was overwhelmingly disheartening. I came close, not at this time, but like generally to giving up many, many, many times. Between the lack of money, feeling like a fraud, no one being interested in it, and the sheer emotional capacity to keep going, I wondered what the hell I was doing and why I didn't just give up. I mean, like I was torturing myself at some point. And I guess this is a question for us as creatives, like why do we do it to ourselves? Why do we want to do this? And I think at that time when it came down to it, every time I questioned, like, just give it up, walk away, while there was sort of a relief in that, I thought, what if what if I didn't do this? Was I prepared for that not to happen? And I looked inside, and in the far off distance, somewhere there was that little flame, that little tiny light. It was so small, it was barely there, but it was there. And the reason we do it to ourselves is because that's what we do. We are inherently creative beings, and we create ideas, we innovate, we create babies, life. Like this is art, this is what we do. So my challenges at the time were running out of time. The Olympics were less than 12 months away at that point, missing all the events overseas. I had no team and no cash flow. Lesson number 4, just take the next step. So that's what I did. Like I said, didn't have the cash, and I'd missed all of 2019 on the road, but I still had Dane, my cinematographer, who'd come on board a couple of years earlier, and he'd already decided that he was all in no matter what. The Tokyo Games started getting, 8 months away, 7 months away, 6 months away. I still didn't know how I was going to finance the film, but I came back to what could I do today? We could film. Poppy was back from overseas. It didn't cost us anything. It was just our time. She got fitted for her Olympic uniform. We filmed her down the street in Newcastle. She was also 19. So we did a couple of interviews. She was actually no longer that unarticulate child earlier that she had been earlier. She had words and opinions, and she had thoughts on the world. So every time I would get overwhelmed by the unknown, I just came back to, what can I do now? No one can predict a global pandemic. We all remember that, March 2020. So March 1st, I was 3.5 months away from the Tokyo Games. No cash, no producer, and a film about a girl going to the Olympics. 3 weeks later, I had no producer, no cash, and a film about a girl going to the now cancelled Tokyo Games. Seriously, what the fuck? I know that was said multiple times over the last 18 months and at the time. Moving into Act 3, the twist, the climax, and the resolution. So for the first time ever, not for the first time ever, for the first time in a long time, with lockdown 2020, I had space. I had been working my ass off, life, family, tragedy, going for years and years, and everything just stopped. For me, lockdown 2020, world pandemic aside, it was actually incredibly useful and inspiring in the end. I spent a lot of time at the beach, looking at the ocean, and with the luxury of time and JobKeeper, I got to ask myself questions and explore answers. I got a bit of clarity on a few things. I also got to write, and I wrote a treatment for the film, which was something I hadn't really done in a way that expressed the film that I wanted to make. When I did that, I realized I could see it. It had a beginning, it had a middle, and it had an end. I could see this film for the first time. So at the time, in spite of that, I did have these challenges: a world pandemic with a complete uncertainty, the Olympic Games off or postponed. Up until that point, I had so much noise in my life, and I was still dealing with that constant doubt. As Roxette would say, lesson number 5, listen to your heart, or follow your gut or your instinct. Because of that time and space, I actually got to hear what was going on and go back to the things that I really was interested in the film. And I realized I had years worth of footage. I had a girl who is now a woman. Over the years, I'd found it really hard to actualize what that story was. And I got stuck on what are the stakes? And everyone kept telling me that it was all about the Olympics, and it had to be this competitive drive, and it had to be about her training and what she was up against, and these super, super big overarching outward physical stakes. But with the cancelled games, it gave me the chance to see the story of what it would be without the Olympics. And the story was there. It was this coming of age film. She was this passionate kid who had gotten into skateboarding, and she was feeling all these things and growing up and dealing with that. And that was super interesting to me. And that was enough. I love this image because I think it's so apt for our creative ideas. It's always this tug of war that we get so often with the logical mind and our hearts getting in the way, or the mind getting in the way of our heart. So with space and quiet, we go back to what you listen to. She was also, in fact, this role model to the younger version of myself. Her story was what I needed to see at 13 or 14 or 15 or 16, that I needed to see someone like her. That was the story I was trying to tell, not this girl going to the Olympics. That just happened to happen along the way. And that's what I connected with. And with that, so I had this newfound understanding of the film. And with that, I was able to take it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to commit to this, no matter what, because I found that heart and that instinct. I was like, I know what this is about. I know what this story is trying to tell. And I know that I'm not the only one that needs to see this. And this is super important. Sorry, going back. So yeah, I committed to it. I had a choice, and whatever challenge presented themselves, I would just figure it out. Love this image. Time reveals things that you need to know. I love the fact that this just represents creative ideas. Even for me trying to sort out this talk, 2 weeks ago, it was a big bundle of mess. And the story is actually a lot bigger than this, but it was how do I refine this to get the main points across? And that over time and with space, you can always, the answers will reveal themselves. This is the process of actualizing a creative idea. It's like getting something in your head into a physical form and out of you. You know, I don't know why we expect to want to be at the end when already it's just something that we do. So with this newfound treatment and kind of like gusto for it, I was like, right, I need a team. I need people to help me to get this to life. So I went out, knocked on a bunch of doors, and I actually reconnected with Jo from Candid Films Australia. And she was the person I was actually working with all those years earlier. When I'd met Poppy, we were working on a skateboarding idea that actually didn't end up getting off the ground. So it was so fantastic to reconnect with her. She had just the right amount of blind faith, optimism, and tenacity to jump on board and help produce the film. Found an editor, a couple of composers, story producer, and they jumped on board. And I think because at that stage I had committed to it, they were willing to commit along with me as well, because it required an awful lot of internal strength for what we were about to do.
What you gonna do, Derek? Congratulations, you're still my agent.
So 2020 rolled around, and after a long, hard application process, we actually got some post-production funding. And I love that bit with Tom Cruise, because that's really what I felt like at the end. I was like, fuck it, we finally got it. And it wasn't a lot of money. It was just enough to take everything that we had sitting on hard drives and work for 6 months to make the film. So Screen Australia, ABC, Candid Films with Jo, Garage Entertainment, which is the distributor, City of Newcastle and Optus all threw in a little bit of cash that was enough to get us there. So, you know, this was the climax. I got to like get this film made. However, there was a fair few challenges at that point. I knew it would be difficult, but I really had no idea how challenging it would be at that time. This was January of this year. So the first thing was we had a deadline that we couldn't move, the Olympics and a release date. The timeline that we had to make this film was around 5 months. And looking back on it, it was a total kamikaze timeline. There is so much you have to do. For even the most seasoned professionals, you couldn't do it. Like, people would walk away from it. There is no way they would say yes to it. We really needed like 8 months. We had to like edit, cut, assemble, choose the scenes. Poppy's family archives alone were immense, and choosing the stuff that best told that story took forever. Luckily, the people that I had on board to help get this film finished all came from advertising, and while that timeline was insane, we were used to working to those deadlines, and we were only crazy enough to do it. Physical cash, while we had been given the cash, we actually hadn't been given the physical cash. It took months and months and months to get it, because particularly with the screen bodies, there is so much paperwork that you have to do to get through it. And normally you would wait until you got that cash, but because we had this timeline, we just had to get on with it. That also meant I was still picking up freelance work while I was sitting in an edit suite trying to get my film finished, which was insane. Because it was a small production budget, all of us were doing 10 jobs at once. We all needed assistance. I was sitting in the edit suite, getting emails, trying to find talent releases, trying to get crew to sign documents, because we needed insurance, because we were going on the ABC, which meant, like, I cannot tell you enough how much craziness there was in paperwork. We had a tiny budget, and like 2 weeks out, we found out we had to pay $70,000 for 5 minutes worth of footage, which was something we simply did not have. We were finishing the film and marketing it. Poppy had left Australia. She had for the USA for training. So we're trying to organize interviews, get photos, get her to sign off on stuff. The trailer, anything that you needed, everything was condensed, and like the bandwidth was insane. The etceteras were multiple. Like, my hot water system blew up. Mercury was retrograde. I don't know, like that heads on fire emoji cannot explain enough how much went wrong in that time. But, well, the lesson number 6, fuck flow. There is no such thing as, you know, going with the flow. Like, the stars do not align. You run around putting them into place. Flow is a symptom of the work we're doing. It's not the cause of it. And it wasn't just at this time, it was overall, you know, in the 6-7 years that I had solidly committed to this idea. While there was moments of flow, and obviously writing the story, there was flow in it, overall, there was none. Like, it really just came down to determination, grit, showing up and being committed to finding solutions. That last 6 months, like, I would wake up in the morning and I was scared to turn my phone on because I was like, what else is going to go wrong? But because I'd been through what I had to that point in terms of figuring out what I wanted to do, being committed, taking the next step, it was like, well, we just have to do this. I just have to get on with it and we will find a way. And we did find a way. Tall Poppy, we made it with 6 days to spare before it was hitting cinemas. We made the film. I was super excited. And we had our premiere event on Sunday, the 28th of June, 2021. We were going to celebrate. We were going to get together in a room. It was the one thing that I was so looking forward to. Do you guys remember that weekend of the 28th of June? We got locked down. We got cancelled. We got completely cancelled. That was 3.5 months ago. As David from Schitt's Creek says, it was literally what the actual fuck. And if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Which brings me to lesson number 7 and my final lesson. In the end, there are no guarantees. Back to Seth Godin. I know I've talked a lot about him, but it's a great book. I thoroughly recommend you go out and get it. So art is the work we do where there is no right answer, and yet the journey is worth the effort. You might make art with a keyboard, a paintbrush, or in my case, a camera. We do it because we want to have a shot at making a difference. It's the way we change our culture and ourselves. We do it without guarantee, with simply a practice we have chosen to commit to. So in spite of all that, we did actually get a bit of a cinema run. It wasn't the biggest run. We had sold out our premiere events, but they got cancelled in New South Wales. We got to number 2 on the iTunes charts in Australia for documentary. Thrasher talked about us, Slam magazine. As Nicole said, Flick said it was one of the best Australian films of 2021 so far. Got a couple of great reviews. Tony Hawk talked about it, which was incredible for something that a skateboarding film. We got a lot of great reviews, and I think, and a lot of TV, press and publicity, which was awesome, partly because of the film and partly because it was Poppy. And with me, when I was getting to read those reviews, the thing that was awesome for me was the fact that the story I actually wanted to tell was what was resonating with people. You know, it's an inspiring story at a time when we need them. And I've always gone to film to be inspired. It's what I wanted to do. And just because it was a documentary, it didn't need to end in disaster. And we were in lockdown. Like, the world's been in this pandemic. Most people want to just be inspired and feel good about the world. You know, even now when I see like the reviews and it says director Justine Moyle, it's a total spin out, and I'm still getting used to it. But yeah, it's been great to get that, and it's been great to see that people have really resonated with Poppy's story. You know, that it's about resilience and the importance of inner strength, and I think there's something really great about that. And sometimes you never know who's going to get a kick out of watching your film.
She went upside down.
Oh my goodness.
Her head was upside down.
Oh, wow.
And she then somersaulted to the other side.
So clever.
Yeah, so clever.
I never intended to make the film for people that young. That's a bit of nepotism. That's my 4.5-year-old niece. And honestly had no idea that she would respond that way. But it's actually the reason, you know, why I made the film, was for young girls to see themselves differently and to see that those things are possible for them, no matter who they are or, you know, how they stand, how they attack the world. So I guess that brings us back to the beginning and our definition of resilient. And the one thing that I would say I don't agree with is that it talks about springing back or bouncing back to what you were before. And that is absolutely not the case. You know, we go on this journey to grow and change, and we are definitely not the people that we started out as. Actualizing your creative idea will change you. And I guess in saying that, what have I become over the period of this time is confident, skilled, capable, way more resilient than I ever thought I was possible. And I'm definitely feeling more myself, strangely, after all of that. And I guess the final thing is a director. So yeah, that's my talk, and that's my film. And I realized I haven't given any details about it, but if you are interested in watching the film, you can do that by checking it out online. It's available on our website. We are independent filmmakers, so anyone who's interested in jumping on and buying it, we'd be really grateful. And thank you so much for having me, guys, and listening to my story.
Wow, Jazz. You've got lots of jazz hands. They're all like screaming on the inside. Hey guys. Wow, like that was such an incredible talk. Thank you. And yeah, now you guys can see why Justine needed to talk on this. And we've got time for Q&A. I would absolutely love you guys to ask Justine some questions. I really would love people to ask questions on video, because that's just a bit more human. However, if you're one of those people that just is like, that freaks you out and you want to ask a question in the chat, then that's cool too. So the way you ask a question is you go to the reactions button, and then there's a little raise hand button. And then if you raise your hand, so if anyone has a question now for Justine, raise your hand or put it in the chat. Let's see. And while we're waiting for people to think of their questions, Jazz, I think the thing that is so incredible about your story is that last point that you just mentioned around, I guess, the things that you have become, and that it's not, you don't go back to being yourself, and you're propelled forward. And the thing that is so unbelievable for me to hear you say is that you're now a director, because I think that we get like just that thing of like, oh, I'm not a director, and I'm not, just can't do it, and I can't say that about myself. And now that you can say that about yourself, and how does that feel? I guess, like, how does it feel being able to say, yeah, and you've got a film that was in cinemas, and even though you couldn't go to your own launch at the cinema, tell us about how that feels to now be like able to say, yeah, I'm a director.
I think, and I don't know how everyone feels, but I think when, that imposter syndrome, and like, and particularly for women, there's this whole thing around owning space and being like, yeah, I can do this. It's definitely something I'm getting used to. And I'm like, I have to do it because I did it. Like, there's proof there. So it's actually it's like weird, because it's going back to that and going, well, yeah, I am, because we did it. And I made that, and I had creative choices in making that film that were mine, and that I had a vision, and that's the vision that we made. And I love that the film talks about all the things that I wanted to see, which was seeing a young girl figure out herself in the world and deal with the challenges that we all deal with. And that she wasn't, naturally competitive, but that she could still be in that environment. And I thought, yeah, I guess, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but yes and no. Yes, because I have the proof now.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a question from Lucielle, I think it is. So I'm going to just ask Lucielle, unmute you, and if you can talk, start. Where are you? Lucielle.
It was unmuted, but now it's not.
Oh, I think maybe now. Go.
There we go. Hi. Jess. I was lucky. I worked with Justine about 5 years ago, so at the start of the journey. That was amazing presentation, Jess. I just wanted to ask, now with your profile and Tall Poppy going live and all the media coverage, have you got a lot of interest for new projects, and what's next?
To be honest, I needed a break. I was absolutely smashed, and like that, when I could have done the whole talk on just that last section of when we got the funding and making the film. That was the most challenging thing ever, actually, in getting that done. So, and because lockdown happened at that particular time as well. So I've literally been just like taking a step back and breathing and going, okay, what next? And I do have some ideas and I'm looking forward to kind of getting them off the ground. And over the next few months, I'm like looking at some options about what I want to do. And I'm working in advertising, making a little bit of cash. And yeah, it's exciting. It's like, I feel very confident in going forward in that way now. And I'm making decisions about the work that I take. So yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, great question. Okay, we have a question in the chat from Gary. Did you consider a Kickstarter for funding?
I did a few times. And in fact, when I was working with the producers earlier on, we talked about it. And the thing was, the amount of work that's required for a Kickstarter is just as much. Like I may as well have just put the money in myself to make it at that level. With more time, we maybe would have done that in this last 6 months to fill the gaps that we had when we got hit with that ridiculous archive fee. Side note, the people that made the most money out of this film is a huge US corporation in the US for the license footage, like compared to the rest of us. But because of the time, we just didn't have it. I think Kickstarter campaigns are definitely useful and there's a place for them, but they're an awful lot of work to do.
Amazing. Oh, okay. Yes, we have another question. Tak, unmute. Can you wait? Maybe I need to do it.
Hey, Tak.
Hi, Justine. How are you? How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, man. Amazing story. Yeah, like, you know, the actual movie is amazing. So congratulations to you and your team. I know what it's like, you know, to go through that and like the process. Words can't express it. Obviously, just have a look through the chat. Everybody's going crazy, as I am as well. So congratulations. Massive, emotional, heartfelt.
Thank you.
So my question is, I guess, yeah, what would you like, knowing how much, you know, cathartic sort of experience you've gone through, you know, you obviously want to keep going as well. And there's a lot there, like you're going so much as well. Absolutely. What would you do differently for your next project? Like, I know like it's a tough question, but do you know what I mean? Like, what would you try to do differently? Like, I know I'm not saying like, what would you have changed, but like moving ahead.
How would I do it differently? I guess, because I, you know, somewhere along the way, I was like one of the reasons I was like, do I keep doing this or do I give up? Because I want to actually, you know, move into this career. And at one point I was like, well, do I just go to film school? But what I was doing was putting myself through like a real life film school. So I took a lot of chances and was like, you know what, if I do this right and I do this well, then I only have to do it this way again once, hopefully. I mean, getting funding is still really, really difficult, but I've now proven it. You know, I've proven I can do it. I've proven that I've got that. And it wasn't a big investment for Screen Australia or Create New South Wales in terms of, you know, like I think our film was like 250 grand and Girls Can't Surf got like 1.8 million. So being able to show that we were able to do that and use the money, I think so. And I won't go that far next time. And I'm very, very clear on like not going that far, but I've proven myself. Now I can like work to get the money up in a different way. And I would definitely ask for more time in post. Like, I mean, we had a time we couldn't move it because of the Olympics and because of the broadcast date. I mean, even when Poppy, like I wasn't sure Poppy was even going to get into, like COVID was still a thing. We were like, what happens like if that doesn't happen? But particularly in the post process, if you can inbuild like time away so that you can sit back and go, great, does this work? Because we didn't have that. We just did not have that time at all. But our advertising background really helped us to make decisions quickly and move on.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. Well done. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tak. Okay, and now we have, we're going to have, I think, one last question from Pia. And then Luke, and then we're going to go back to Bill. So, Pia, can you unmute?
Hi. So inspiring. I felt like you were speaking kind of my journey. I used to have an AFTRS. I'd met Bill Whaley years back, which was probably before your time, at AFTRS, and I remember going there in my teen years and doing some work and stashing that brochure and actually applying. They said, come back when you're about 25 and you've got more kind of world experience. So I kind of took off overseas at 20 and I lived in the States until 36. So and then moved back to Australia. But one of the questions I had, there was two questions. One is I actually worked on Unstoppable for Bethany Hamilton. So we did the crowdfunding campaign. Yeah, so we did the Kickstarter campaign for Bethany's film, and we brought in about, it was like 160 or 180 of early funding, which really helped Aaron just get off. Just which is such expensive part of it is just the travel freeze.
Yes, yes. So I heard that you got 180 off Kickstarter.
Yeah, and that was really just for travel, really, because as you know, that's like, it becomes such a beast to kind of travel and have all the equipment to travel with. And I also worked on Lakey Peterson's documentary years ago called 0 to 100 in a bit more of a capacity. And I guess two of my questions would be, now that you can leverage Tall Poppy, are you quite a purist on wanting Australian funding only, or are you someone who would look to collaborate outside? Like, do you feel like the world's now opened up where you could kind of collaborate more and then that opens more opportunities? And the other was, do you feel like you'd like to follow the channel of documentaries that are about empowerment and growth? Because I know Aaron Lieber, who I worked with for a long time, his specialty really became, a lot of it was female surfers. So Lakey's and Unstoppable. And do you see a theme coming out, even though it takes so long to do and so much heart space? Like, are you like, yes, this is where it is?
So a couple of things. I just remembered the other reason why we didn't do Kickstarter, which was in terms of Bethany Hamilton. I know that she has like massive followers, and God love Poppy, love her, but she's not someone who is like an influencer and she's like, follow me, do this, do that. So having someone like that who's on board that can help with that Kickstarter campaign, I think if Poppy was more like that, I would have done that.
Yeah, we did it with Lakey too, and didn't get as much with Lakey because she wasn't as well known. It was right before she won the US Open of Surfing. Yeah. So it still did okay, but we only brought in about 30, where Bethany is a game changer.
Yeah. I'm interested in stories and curious and extraordinary and ordinary. I'm really curious about like the line of documentary bleeding into fiction. Richard Linklater is a huge influence on me, and I think we did that with Tall Poppy. That like it was a real story, but people were entertained by it because we really did make it a character-based story and created those opportunities that were real in terms of drama. So that's the way that I see my career heading, and I'm excited about those things. I feel like I don't have a choice, actually. Like, it's really hard. Not in a bad way, but I'm like, I've signed up for this. That it's just that thing inside me that's like, even if it's difficult, I know I'll fucking go back and do it again. But just not, hopefully, with a little bit more backing to starting out. And I definitely, actually, the other lesson I have is like, you need a team. You cannot do this alone. You always need people with you through this, and finding people. So Dane, my cinematographer, hi Dane, I can see you there. When he came, he was the one person from that kind of stuck with me 3.5 years and through his heart and soul at that point. And then everyone who came on at the very end, and Joe, committed 2000% in the last 8 months to be able to make this happen the way it happened. So you need a team, you need people who are willing to believe in you and the story that you're trying to tell.
All right. Awesome questions. Thank you so much, Pia. We have one very, very quick question. Luke, if you can make it really quick, I'll get Luke, you can ask your question, and then we're going to go back and see what Bill has done. So Luke, just a quick one, if possible.
Yeah, it is a quick one, actually. Can you please just repeat the 7 lessons of resilience?
Yeah, sure. Lesson 1, start where you are. Lesson 2, feel the fear and do it anyway. Lesson 3, never ever give up unless you do, and that's okay. Lesson 4, just take the next step. Lesson 5, listen to your heart or listen to your gut and commit. Fuck flow.
That's my favorite.
and lesson number 7 is there's no guarantees.
Well, thanks, Luke. That was really good to ask that.
Thank you.
Really nice
Yes.
summary of Justine's awesome epic talk. Juz, thank you so much. Yeah, wow. So look, all I can say is I hope you guys have loved Justine's talk, and go and watch the film if you haven't already seen it, because it's just really damn good. But we're going to cross over to Bill. I feel like I'm like one of those, I'm going to cross to Bill. I kind of feel like some wanky reporter. Whoa, check that out. Can you guys all see that?
Oh, wow.
Look what Bill, go tell us, talk us through this incredible, speaking of creativity,
Sure.
Holy crap.
Thank you so much, Justine. It was an awesome talk. I'll just quickly go through what I've been sketching up. So we started off with the 2 Side Hustle 60s. We had Bronte the Illustrator, and we had Nicole's new podcast, which we should all check out. I've got a little drawing of you with your fantastic hair there. Then we went on to Justine, kind of telling her incredible story of putting together the Tall Poppy movie. So we sort of had it broken into the 3 acts of starting the journey of when she met Poppy, back when she was just a little kid in Bondi, wanting to direct, getting into filming, all sort of the long process of getting first rounds of funding and flying to the US, going through the sort of struggles of imposter syndrome and trying to figure out what are the stakes for Poppy in the story, really sort of hitting a bit of a rock bottom in 2018, but managing to sort of pick the project up again after COVID and having that time in lockdown to sort of reassess. And then that final dash towards the finish with the post-production funding and getting the movie out. So that's kind of how it all came together. I've got the 7 lessons along the side there for reference. And yeah, we'll make sure we get a copy out of this out to everyone. So
yes.
Yeah, thanks again.
Wow, thanks, Bill, guys. Show Bill some love, some jazz hands in the chat. Wow, like I don't know, every single month that you do this, it's like I've never seen it before. I'm so amazed that I just don't know how you do this. Like that's incredible. So guys, I will post this on the socials, and you can all like grab a copy. Wow, so that takes us to the end, right on 10 o'clock. Amazing. I hope you have enjoyed this. Thanks, Flynn. Flynn's given some little reactions there. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. I will keep you all posted as to what's going on with whether we, when we can go to back in-person events. I cannot wait. I'm probably going to hug you all like personally at the door when you enter. But for those of you that have been able to join from other places, it's been really special having you. And it's Friday. So guys, enjoy your Friday. Have a super beautiful, creative and inspiring weekend. And that is it. So lots of love and see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.